Hello, my beautiful friends and my fellow space blobs existing in this world that is so obsessed with linear progress and production and performance and forward motion and making things happen and goal setting and building a persona and being somebody in the world and leaving a legacy. How are we all feeling with all of those pressures? I can tell you, as I sit down today to chat about one of my favorite transits for its poetry, its countercultural core, its rebellious, peaceful, quiet revival of some kind of soul and spirit and song in life. I'm feeling really worn out by all of that running around in life. All the trying to please, all the different factors, all the different voices of the world, it builds up over time. And all of the daydreaming and the floating in outer space and the times when it doesn't feel like we're doing anything of value, or the times when we feel like we're taking backward steps, are so devalued in this culture. So today, yes, I want to talk about Mercury retrograde, why I think this is one of the best places for inviting soul back into our lives, inviting our unique rhythms, getting out of this mechanistic culture that we live in and reclaiming the softness of spaces. But I also think this is going to be a chat that is just for anybody who feels like they maybe aren't doing enough, or feels like their process. Maybe you are somebody who has a process where you have to sit still for quite a while before you can take action, or you have to take a lot of breaks, or you have to kind of float around in outer space for quite a while before something culminates. This is a video for you. This is a conversation for you. And I am right there with you. That is how I have experienced life my entire life. And so many of us feel shame about it. Like we're doing something wrong. We're missing instructions. But I'm here to tell you that that way of doing things is so valid and often really, really potent and important and real and vibrant. And Mercury retrograde is our friend when it comes to that modality of creating and expressing. So let's get into our Mercury retrograde moving through Virgo and Leo this August and feel through it. I think most of us have heard quite a bit about Mercury retrograde over the years because it's kind of the most well-known transit in the astrology world. Even if you're not into astrology, you've heard Mercury retrograde. You've heard that phrase, and you kind of know at some basic level that it's probably going to cause communication issues or planning issues or electronic issues. That's kind of the baseline that we have going on here for the pop astrology and beyond larger overculture story about Mercury retrograde. I have a little bit of a theory, though, about why Mercury retrograde is talked about in these really interesting terms that have to do with struggle, stress, fear, resistance, breakdowns, and kind of this feeling like nothing's working out. And I think that language has developed over the course of these last 60 years or so, when Mercury retrograde became popular as a transit to talk about in horoscopes and in newspapers and in articles, because it hits the very nerve that modern culture is so obsessed with. It hits the very place that so much of this mechanization, high speed, optimization kind of energy that has been the overculture that we've been living in for the last while at this point, it challenges all of that. It says, no, it's not all about linear progress, winning the trophy, doing things on time and consistently and always the same. It's not about always just going straightforward and knowing exactly what you're doing. It's not about achievement and persona and all of these things. Mercury retrograde flies in the face of all of that regularly, because if you really look at it, Mercury is either in pre-shadow, post-shadow, or actual retrograde about half of the year. And the other half of the year, it's moving along. And of course, this is all visual. This is how we experience Mercury from here. As we observe the sky, it looks like Mercury is going backwards. Of course, Mercury isn't actually going backwards. And I love that poetry, right? Because A lot of us creatives, a lot of us sensitives, we will feel like we are going backward or stalling or not doing anything. We will feel like I'm just sitting here and I can't work because I need to just close my eyes. I have to rest. I don't have the idea yet, whatever it might be. And it feels like we aren't moving forward. It appears as though we're going back. We're going back over things, and maybe we are a little bit. But in reality, something is culminating. Something powerful is happening. And it is countercultural because it doesn't look like external achievement. Because it doesn't look like your bog standard, chugging along, go forward, pursue, get your goals, make it happen. And I think that's why I love Mercury retrograde. Even though it's a very popular transit, I think when it's understood as just getting in the way of your progress, and when it's just understood as disrupting everything that you're trying to make happen, that's just not where the beauty is. The beauty is in realizing that this transit reflects a deep need for introspection, stepping out of the linear, working with time differently, incorporating how we're changing profoundly, catching up with our bodies, hearing our intuition, and expanding on a sense of connection with nature and ourselves. And this is really a transit that I think for many people who are living life maybe with a different neurotype, with a different physiology, with all sorts of just different ways of moving through the world, which this community, I think we all know, there's a lot of us around here, which makes me very, very happy. We need this. This is really one of the truest ways the world works. It's one. There are many ways the world works, but this is one. And this particular Mercury retrograde, I'm just fascinated by it. So let's talk a little bit about this Mercury retrograde, because if you've been with me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about this transit a few times by now, because I always do a Mercury retrograde check-in every time it comes back around, which is 3 times a year. This time it's moving through both Virgo and Leo. And I'll just give you the dates really briefly so you can kind of check in with yourself and see if anything's been moving for you. The pre-shadow started back on July 17th in Leo. The Mercury retrograde itself is going to station retrograde at 4 degrees of Virgo on August 4th during the Leo new moon. So that's going to be a really symbolic moment of just checking in. I often find stationing days to be a great time for me to notice what my intuition is telling me about my process, about what I need to pay attention to where I need to slow down, to where I need to stop pursuing so intensely. The Mercury retrograde will go through Virgo for a little bit, and then on August 14th, about midway through, Mercury is going to move back into Leo. And then the second half of the Mercury retrograde will be in Leo, and it will station direct on August 28th at 21 degrees of Leo. The post-shadow phase is going to then go on until September 11th as it moves back over those degrees that it just went backwards through. So, and some people find, everybody's different on this. Some people find the pre and post-shadow phases to be really where they notice the different rhythm of things, where they're learning more, connecting more dots. Some people find it more during the retrograde. I think every Mercury retrograde has been a little bit different for me. Also just trust yourself in what it feels like, because it may or may not feel profound. It might be a little bit subtler. It might be a little softer. It might not be so disruptive. It might be a little more just clear. Sometimes Mercury retrogrades can be a really deep time of clarity and understanding and really good conversations because people have slowed down enough to look around instead of just pursuing forward motion. Pretty valuable, right? And if you happen to be somebody who's needing rest, who likes to float away into the ether, into the stardust for a little bit, this can also be a really beautiful time for powerful visioning, dreaming, heightened intuition. So I just want to talk a little bit about what happens when Mercury is moving retrograde through Virgo and Leo. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, so these two have a really natural connection. And I love it moving through Virgo because it helps us slow down. I know Virgo is often associated with nervousness and just wanting to get everything done and be on top of it. But Virgo is also about coming home to ourselves as a whole being. So I think Mercury retrograde in those first 10 days of this transit is about how we treat ourselves, this idea of self-reputation. How do we talk to ourselves? Do we berate ourselves for moving in a different rhythm than anybody else we know in our lives? Do we berate ourselves for how we're doing anything in life? This is a really wonderful time to just notice those stories, and also to think about, the devotional practices you want to send to your being to encourage and support your whole being in living this life. What is it that you need? Maybe it's very different from anything any wellness culture, romantic movie, family member has ever told you or done, but maybe it's right for you, and reclaiming that uniqueness in yourself. I think this is the first part of this Mercury retrograde. And then as it moves back into Leo, this is really about reworking the visions we have for where we want to put our energy, where we want to put our heart energy, where we want to put our creative ideas. Leo's all about creativity and expression and individuation. So this is a really great time to think about what are you expecting of yourself? What are you wanting to try and force yourself to get done? And does that fit who you are now? Does that connect with who you are now? Does that feel true to you? And where does it need adjustment? Where are you longing for things to feel a little bit different? So this is a transit. This is a time not only to step out of linear production and challenge the cultural expectations of production and mechanizing ourselves and making ourselves be a part of these machines, these machines that are all about capital and stripping humanity and beingness from ourselves and from plants and from animals and everything. Freeing ourselves from that, but it's also about an increase in intuition, a reevaluation of where we're putting our energy, and noticing where we have been cruel to ourselves, finding some grace there, and then also rearranging some of those self-talk stories. It's a really powerful one. There are a few rituals or practices that I really like to tend to and explore during Mercury retrograde, and I think these will be really helpful if you're looking for a way to support yourself and expand on this idea of countercultural time, non-linear process, leaning a little bit more in to the radical acceptance of your rhythm in how you create, in how you think, in how you work, in how your brain works, and how your body works. Which, when I think about people feeling free to do that, it makes me want to cry. It makes me so happy, and I want that for each of us. Anyway, so here are a few of the things that I love to do during a Mercury retrograde to really amplify this powerful, intuitive little window. I like to keep a Mercury retrograde journal. And what I'll do is, it might just be, I might just get, 25 pages of paper, or however many days of the week or of the Mercury retrograde that there are, and I'll just write a little intuitive note. I might note down any time I notice that there is resistance or there is a moment where something's not connecting. And it's really interesting at the end of the Mercury retrograde to just look over these very simple notes. They can just be bullet points. They don't have to be elaborate journal entries. They can be if you want. But I'll notice what was trying to get through to me in that time. And it's very helpful. I will get a lot out of my Mercury retrograde in doing that. Another thing I love to do during Mercury retrograde is to release either something from my home that's no longer serving me, if it's time to let go of items, or labels and identities that are no longer fitting me. We're constantly changing beings in form, and this is a great season where each day I'm allowed to release something and let something go. This can kind of go hand in hand with the Mercury retrograde journal. You could even note down what it is that you are releasing in that journal for each day. It can be symbolic or physical, but it's a really wonderful way to do it. This is a particularly beautiful Mercury retrograde for reassessing your key words and your goals and your identities and your containers. Just having some exploration of what do you want your keywords to be for the final 4 months of 2024. What do you want your keywords to be for how you're treating yourself, what you're focusing on? This is a great time to just reassess. And finally, sometimes what I like to do, probably not every day of Mercury retrograde, let's be real, but is to write some love letters to myself. And this one came to me through thinking about Mercury retrograde in specifically Virgo and Leo, because these two signs really are about fostering a deeply loving devotional relationship to ourselves that allows us to blossom, that allows us to flower. And one of the ways we can do that is by writing to ourselves with appreciation. That's a really powerful one. And just doing it one time can be soul food for yourself. So those are some of the things I love to do to kind of amplify my intuitive knowing during Mercury retrograde. I find this time to be always I'm a little bit closer to the other world the whole time. And that means that, I'm not kind of functioning the way that is nice and tidy externally, but my energy is heightened when it comes to understanding things from behind the scenes. And so I try to really support myself in that and lean into it. And that actually helps things go a little bit more smoothly than when I'm kind of in that determined mode. We're going to see how that feels this time around because y'all, I'm moving at the very end of August. And so that means that the place that I'm sitting in right now, we're dismantling it all during this Mercury retrograde. So it's going to be a really emotional one. And I know I'm going to have to take a lot of breaks in between all of the changing and the moving of pieces. We're going to see how it feels, but I'm shuffling cards, by the way, because I know many of you just want that moment, that intuitive moment. And we have Five of Pentacles, but this is so fitting. This is so fitting to everything. I'm getting full body chills right now in the best way. You know how I started this chat today saying that, a lot of us are just struggling with this mechanized world. It's just not feeling very good. And this card to me represents that feeling of alienation, that linear win the gold medal mindset that is in this world brings about. It's systemic, and when I look at Five of Pentacles, we often talk about finding our empowerment inside, which is so important. It's also important to remember that we do live in this interconnected world, and we live in systems in this world, and those systems are very tied to this Five of Pentacles idea. And I think that when I see this card, there are a couple things that immediately come to mind. One is recognizing that some of the shame stories, some of the blame, some of the ways we talk to ourselves about how we get things done, the rhythm we do it, maybe the odd decisions we make that don't always line up or make perfect sense to the external world, that those stories have come about because we live in a world full of stories about this system that looks like and feels like this. You're never good enough unless you earn it. You're never able to really feel happy or content or at peace unless you're striving for it. It should feel bad. It should feel terrible. You should strip your own humanity away from things. Life should kind of feel like you're a little bit dead inside. That's what all of these mechanized systems have essentially been saying deep down this whole time. So that's one part of it. Just recognizing all that story that's been fed to you through all these years. The other part of this is the self-talk. It is the way we are treating ourselves and just noticing it, just seeing it, and then also just maybe letting the divine help. Just opening to that. It's a really powerful card. Whenever I see Five of Pentacles, I always just feel kind of relief because we can actually look at the thing that is happening. We can actually say, here, I see it. Oh, card already wanted to come out. Nine of Pentacles. Really different energy. Two very Pentacles-based energies, which we are going to be moving with some Virgo energy, earthy energy, but you can kind of see the difference here. The Nine of Pentacles is often associated with self-sufficiency, which that's one lesson. But I think Nine of Pentacles is also that we each have to choose to enter the own garden of our way of doing things. Nine of Pentacles will often note that sometimes to live our true path can be a bit lonely at times, because nobody else can be on that path. Nobody else is going to live the exact road that you're living. You know, your road is unique to you, but also that in embracing that, there's a peace, there's a clarity that comes with that. And when we're trying to live the path of the world at large, it tells us it often feels like this, like we are locked out of something beautiful. We are locked out of ourselves. We are locked out of soul. And I think the contrast with these two cards is really fitting for the conversation we've been having today. Just seeing this visually is really, really powerful. That we must choose the beautiful garden within ourselves. We must choose it even if it doesn't look like external progress. That lesson comes back around every week of my life. I'm pretty sure I without fail, every day of my life. And I'm sure many of yours as well. So actually, I'm going to be doing a deep dive on the minor arcana over on my Patreon this autumn. We are going to do all 4 suits, and it's going to be all about these innate natural rhythms of life and how they work with us, and reclaiming that, getting out of this kind of linear lockstep idea of how we have to treat ourselves. It's going to be really empowering. So even if you're not into tarot practice, the storytelling, the archetypes, the mythology can be really, really helpful. You can apply it to your life without even ever doing a reading. But if you also want to amplify your reading practices, that's going to be happening in late September, early October. The details are to come, but I'd really love you to join me. You can also join me for our entire Wild Dreaming series that we have been working with this entire summer. These are all practices that I use personally, and I walk us through each of them. So if you want help getting back in touch with your unleashed, uncensored, wild dreaming self, I have all the resources there for you on Patreon as well. We also have our Magic Makers Gathering where we meet once a month. We discuss life, astrology, energetics, how we're feeling, and get to know each other. So I'd love to see you in that space. It's really where I'm able to offer you this warm, soft place to reflect and feel. And of course, I love it when you are here. We have so much coming up to cover, and I just cannot wait to explore so many topics with you all in the coming weeks and months. I hope to see you back here very soon, my beautiful fellow space blobs, friends, sparkles, and joyful beings. I love you so much.